The care of human life and happiness and not their destruction is the first and only objective of good governance. Good government is good politics. Good government is one of the most important factors in economic growth and social well-being. Thank you for joining us on Nigeria Now on the June 12th live special edition. And today with me, I have Lois Turaki here in the studio. Lois?
Yes. Mr. Solo, how are you doing? Happy democracy.
Yeah, happy democracy. I can see you are looking brighter. This,
you too,
morning.
you know.
All right.
Yes, it's Democracy Day, and as you can see, we are happy that we're celebrating democracy. And today, not just your regular show co-host that you've been seeing, we have someone special in the studio with us, and we're going to be doing this together. Before we show you our special guest, take a look.
Sarah Reng Ochekpe is a Nigerian politician from the district of Barikin Ladi local government area of Plateau State. She was the Minister of Water Resources from 2011 to 2015. Ochekpe was born October 4th, 1961. She had her first degree in political science from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Kaduna State. Then a master's degree in political administration from University of Jos. She also has postgraduate qualification from Ardenne College of Commerce and Nigerian Institute of Journalism. She's married to Professor Nelson Ochekpe from Otukpo local government in Benue State. Ochekpe occupied several directorial roles in National Orientation Agency, Nigeria, before her ministerial appointment. During her time in government, she's noted to have increased the level of accessible water for Nigerians to 70% and created and rehabilitated artificial waterways that reduced flooding and elevated unemployment.
Really nice to have you on a very good day like this. And from your portfolio, we've seen that you've really done great when you were Minister of Resources during Water Resources during the time of Good Luck. You really did well. It's something that is meant to be applauded. Well done, ma.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we'll say happy democracy, ma.
Happy Democracy Day to you and to the viewers.
Yes. Viewer, remember that we are live on Facebook and YouTube. You can do well to join us, and it is very important to drop your comment and tell us how you feel about today being June 12th, declare as a Democracy Day, a day that Nigerians come to celebrate the 23 years of uninterrupted democracy in this country. And then today we'll look at the military regime and then the civilian rule, and then take a look of how the civil rule is doing, and then how excuse me, the military room also fare then, and then we'll look at, are we having progress, or we are stagnant, or where are we? And then, like we said, we have the former minister here with us, Mrs. Sarah Ochekpe, which we'll be discussing together. We believe is going to be exciting, is going to be interactive, so do well to join us. Before we dive into the discussion, take a look of this.
Historically, the origin of democracy dates back to ancient Greek city-states of the 5th century BC, with Athens as the showest example. Back then, democracy was the opposite of the aristocracy form of governance. For democracy to exist, a given political system has to guarantee freedom and equality. Yet, it should optimize the interdependency between these two principles by means of control. Control is simply controlled by the government as well as control of the government. Prior to May 1999, when democracy re-emerged on the political surface called Nigeria, There existed so many reasons why Nigerians yearned for and preferred democratic system of governance to the military regime. First, many believed that in democratic governments, political leaders would be elected as against military regimes where members of administration are not elected. To others, in a democratic government, fundamental human rights are guaranteed and respected, while military regimes are curtailed and violated with impunity.
Actions of democratic governments are open to public scrutiny and criticisms,
while military regimes are intolerant and undemocratic. The rest argued back then, before 1999, that political instability in the country is the handiwork of the military and exacerbated by their reputation of intolerant, immature, corrupt, unserious, unpatriotic, and tribalistic. Democracy in Nigeria. The long walk to the attainment of democracy in Nigeria began with the successful 1960 independence of Nigeria. After independence and republican status in 1960, that year Nigerians became the citizens of the fourth biggest democratic country in the world, and 1963 respectively. Nigeria experienced its first military coup in 1966, and thereafter civil war broke in 1967 and lasted till 1970. It was possible to restore the democratic ideal for a couple of years in 1978, though the period did not last too long and was over in 1983. Howbeit, some military rulers who came into power via coup d'etat promised to return the country to democracy. Nonetheless, only General Abdulsalami Abubakar, who took the power after the death of Sani Abacha, kept his word. The country's modern constitution became official in 1999. The elections of 1999 were more successful compared to the previous military ruler. The emerged President Olusegun Obasanjo put a stop in the military regimes that kept switching one after the other for almost 30 years. The end of the military rule culminated in a new era of regular elections, as well as the return of civil liberties, free press, and an end to arbitrary arrest and maltreatment, although human rights violations still occur regularly. Also, Nigeria began a long campaign against the bureaucratic and military corruption that had crippled its economy and severely tarnished its international reputation. Democracy in Nigeria is celebrated yearly, though undeniably, Nigeria still has many problems to overcome. There is hope for a more prosperous and brighter Nigeria with a better economy, improved standard of living, and security. In commemoration of the restoration of democracy in Nigeria, May 29th was declared a public holiday by President Olusegun Obasanjo. This tradition was upheld for 18 years, beginning in 2000. Now, it holds on June 12th. On June 6, 2018, 8 days after May 29, 2018 had been celebrated as the Day of Attainment of Democracy in Nigeria. However, the President Buhari-led federal government of Nigeria declared June 12th as the new Day of Democracy in Nigeria. This is in commemoration of the democratic election of MKO Abiola on June 12, 1993, in what would have been adjudged to be the freest and fairest election Nigeria ever had, but was cancelled by the Ibrahim Babangida junta.
Welcome back. Thank you for that piece. We just put that together just to give us a background on how to go about our discussion. Before we had you were born 1 year before independence, after independence rather, sorry. And then I so much believe from your biography we know you're someone that held so many positions, and then you've done well in your area of calling, you know, and here you are today in the studio. We can confidently say you tested even the oldies, you know, and then the new era. Permit me to just put it that way. Now, the military and the civilian. First of all, the clamor is just that during military era, you know, there's no that freedom, you know, and constitution is not in place, because anytime the military are ruling, the constitution is being suspended, and people target that to be not more of people-oriented government. That is where you can easily say it's a dictatorship. What someone wants, that is what he will do at a particular time, and nobody question him, because it's coming from the higher authority. And then that is when people started talking about democracy. We want people to be involved. We have that freedom of speech. We have that freedom of movement. People should express themselves. People should say what they want. Here we are. You have tested the military regime, and then now the new era. So what's your take?
Well, just like you said, in a military regime, there are restrictions. The military government would usually rule by decrees. And once they issue the decrees, they are not such that can even be tested in the courts. But with a civilian regime, the constitution is the supreme law of the country. Anything that is outside the constitution or its at variance with the constitution cannot really hold. So certainly under a democracy, you have more opportunities for the people, and in a democracy, like the common definition goes, is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. So there's a greater involvement of the people in the process of governance. As long as you are 18 years and above, you are eligible to register as a voter, and you can also contest for an election. You vote, and you can also be voted for. In a military regime, that does not exist. In a civilian regime or a democratic regime, you are able to elect from the lowest level of governance, that's at the local government level. Every ward, electoral ward, is represented by a councillor in the local government council. So that's the government nearest to the people, and the people are able to exercise their rights there, to express interest, to contest at that level, and also mobilize support from that level. And then you also can elect a local government chairman. You can elect your representative to the House of Assembly, to the federal constituency, that's the House of Representatives, to the Senate, and also elect a president. So the people are involved all through. But in a military regime, they would appoint a military administrator or a military governor. It's the president or the Supreme Military Council that has the powers to decide who would be at the helm of affairs at the state level. And then at the state level, the governor also is the one who would decide who would be in charge of the local government. And so the freedom of the people is restricted, it's curtailed, and the number of persons involved in political processes, in the processes of governance, are also limited. The military can decide either to work for the people or not work for the people. In a democracy where the leaders do not work for the people even have a right to protest. So one has seen through the different levels of governance that has operated in Nigeria. I would say I was born when democracy was in place. I was very small then to know exactly what was happening. But I think when I started growing up, I got into primary school. That was when there was the coup, the military coup, and then there was a military government. It was in the days of Yakubu Gowon and, as head of state. And things were still relatively good at that time. The 12 states were created. There was lots of development in terms of infrastructure. And today in Plateau State, in Nasarawa, in Benue and parts of Taraba, one can still point to some of the things that the governor of Benue Plateau State then, Governor J.D. Gomwok, did. There are infrastructure that are still standing. In Jos, for instance, the state secretariat, it's a handiwork of the governor then. Then roads were constructed and things like that. But as time went on, with change from one military regime to the other, the people-oriented programs started getting reduced. And young military officers were appointed to positions of authority as governors. Some did some work, but some you couldn't really pin down what exactly they did. And a lot of resources, of course, was expended. And then the democracy came under Shehu Shagari, President Shehu Shagari. We know there are lots of things that were done. There was more involvement of people, like I said. You could register to vote, and then you can also contest. I remember it was exciting for me to be registered to vote when I was 18. And by the time we got into the university, there were programs targeted at education, getting more children into schools. First, there was the UPE under Obasanjo, but then it continued with the Shehu Shagari administration. And I also know, I remember that there were provisions to support students, especially at tertiary institutions. There was what was called either Bulgaria or scholarship. For some of us, it was so much money then. It was just 1,000 naira for the whole year, but it was a lot of money. You couldn't spend all of that in school, whether to buy your books, pay for your accommodation, or travel and feed yourself. It was a lot of money. But we saw that as time went on, these things started dwindling. And then there was the military interruption by the Buhari government then, the military government. And then again, there were efforts at, bringing about democracy, and one confusion after the other. And things, I would say, have not really been good ever since. But I would always prefer a democratic government than a military government, because, like I said, there are restrictions when it comes to military government. Freedoms, the people's freedom is curtailed, and the level of participation is limited. You can't really express yourself. Under the Obasanjo democracy, going into Yaradua to Goodluck Jonathan, I know that efforts were made to make the people have a sense of belonging. And it was good, but in the past 8 years, I would say, in as much as we've continued with democracy, but we've seen a variant of the democratic practice, that one is confused whether it's military, whether it's Islamic, or whether it's democracy. And we see again that the space is being contracted. The level of freedom is not as you expect in a democracy. We have also gone through all manners of crisis. Today it's Boko Haram, tomorrow it's herdsmen, unknown gunmen, bandits, kidnappers, and all kinds of things. And it's getting scary, but I believe that it's still possible to have a turnaround, of course, with the help of God, not just our own human efforts.
The thing is, we've seen the reasons why. We've looked at the history of democracy and the reason why we opted for democracy as a country. But it's just sad that, just like you have mentioned, we have not really fared well in the democratic setting. Like you said, the issue of banditry, insecurity has become the talk of the day. We have become a country that we can't even express ourselves so much. We castigated, or we preferred the democratic setting because we didn't have that freedom in the military regime. You can't say what you want to say. There's no criticism to the government. You can't. There's no public scrutiny, and you can't do a lot of things during that time. But now, even as we have the democratic setting, we have not really fared well. We have not really enjoyed the tenets of democracy. We are just there. We're not in between. Are we really making progress when it comes to this democracy, or we should go backwards to the military? And let's just know that we are in the military regime than being in a democratic regime, and we are not enjoying the benefits of democracy.
Yes, because out there, because of the fall apart of all of this social amenity that you mentioned, you know, people are saying, okay, you just mentioned of during the military, this is how things were, you know, even infrastructure that today you can still see some really standing side by side with the new generation project, if you permit me to put it that, because in Jos here, Plateau State, we have the J.D. Gombok building that is still standing tall. I think is the highest building, you know, in Jos. And then you have the Secretariat, is one of the best in West Africa. You know, it has rated. And during the military regime, you talk about roads, you talk about school. Even University of Jos, you know, is during the military regime because it was Gongwak, you know. And when you look at it and then you compare and you say, okay, this is time for democracy, which people are involved in how they want to be governed. Like, we want more schools, we want more roads, electricity mentioned. And then you see everything going down and people begin to feel like it's better we go back to the military era, even though when, like you rightly said, they use decree. But people still prefer that maybe it's the language that Nigerians understand, because you find that even in this our civilian rule now, wherever there is, let me put it that this way, maybe people not following order. For instance, like in a queue, you find out when they invite the military, you will now see people, you know,
being orderly as they should.
And people are saying, if military were able to do this, and then Nigerians understand the language of the military, why not the military should just rule? And they said, we want three universities in each state, and then the decree rather says, okay, go ahead, nobody questions it. And then water, electricity.
Well, in as much as one appreciates that the military is a regimented service, and so they always have this saying, obey the last order. So we see some form of orderliness within the military setting. I would still prefer democracy, and I think the problem is for us Nigerians to talk to ourselves. Nigerians, it's not an issue of when the military is there, Nigerians would seem to have a sense of orderliness or they will obey orders. I have seen Nigerians at home, they can be chaotic, but once they cross the shores of Nigeria, they obey every rule in the new setting that they find themselves. So I think it's something that we need to talk to ourselves. Yours is a religious organization, and let me say that I'm very happy that ECWA Television exists. I believe that you can use this as a platform to educate not just members of ECWA, but whoever has access to your television about what is right to do, behaviors that are expected of any human being at all, let alone a Christian. We should be organized, we should be orderly, and we should be respectful of laws and orders of our country. Clamoring for a military regime with an expectation that Nigerians will begin to behave themselves. The way I see it, under the circumstances we find ourselves today, I don't think it's going to help us much. Why do I say so? It's within this period that we have the crisis, we have democracy running, and then we've had a lot of involvement of the military in the society, because the military before now were restricted to the barracks. But with the crisis, they've been drafted to serve as special task forces. They've been assigned to mount roadblocks for checking of people who would otherwise be aggressors to different communities. And my expectation has been that with the level of involvement of the military, that they would assist in ensuring that there's orderliness, especially on our highways. But it's at the military checkpoints that you see all kinds of things happening. And I keep wondering, what is the purpose of the military checkpoint? Because once people get there, they are impatient, and you find people trying to overtake, as it's commonly said, they are shunting, and the military is there. If I were the one to be at the checkpoint, if you do not follow the queue, I would make sure that you go right back and then join the queue as you should before you come and pass. But it's right at the military checkpoint. And people have alleged that sometimes people bribe their way to be able to cut corners or cut through the traffic. For me, it's a pointer to the fact that even if we have military rule today, we won't have much in terms of impacting on the attitude of the people. So it's better in a civilian regime when we get to talk to ourselves, when we get to realize that here we are in a nation that is endowed with all kinds of resources, human and material resources. God is just merciful to Nigeria, and we humble ourselves like we were at the Solemn Assembly for Plateau State last week, and it was a session that brought the clergy and the congregation and other leaders in society, the politicians. The governor was there, so other political leaders were also there to humble themselves before God. I think that the starting point for Nigeria is for those who name the name of the Lord, like the Bible says, to depart from iniquity, to depart from all kinds of wrongdoings, and to seek God's face on what we need to do to help our nation. I think when we start from there, then things will begin to turn around for us. As Christians, we read the Bible, and we've seen example in the lives of the Israelites. There are times that they went off course completely, and God allowed them to be chastised by all kinds of foreign powers. And whenever they realized their mistake and turned to God, He helped them. And things went on well for them. So I believe that if we pray and also are desirous of a change, that things can turn around for us. Interestingly, in my Sunday school this morning, I was teaching pre-teenagers, and we read the story of Josiah. Josiah was just 8 years old when he became king. And the Bible records that he did what was right in the sight of the Lord. And as he grew, he kept realizing the need to walk in the ways of God. It said that in the 8th year of his reign, that he started seeking the God of his ancestor David. And by the time he was 18, he also took certain steps that was like taking the people off, the wrong path and leading them in the path of the Lord. He organized the people to rebuild the ruins of the temple, and in the course of their rebuilding and cleaning the temple, they found the law of the Lord, and they read it and gave it to him. And when he read it, he was very remorseful and repentant and cried before the Lord and sent to the prophet to find out what should they do. I believe that we're at a point that all those who aspire to leadership must aspire in a way that they would take us back to the right path of living as humans and also being of service to the Lord and to humanity. Because the Bible says the greatest commandment is first to love God and then to love our neighbors as ourselves. So whatever we do should be such that brings the best and the good. Like you said, that good governance is to ensure that the people have the greatest good out of the leadership that exists. So I believe that the Christians have a big role to play, and anyone who aspires into leadership, whether Christian or non-Christian, must be willing to serve the people, and the person must be willing to find out what is the right way to do things and to do it. The military will not help us much. We may just subject ourselves to more oppression and more divisions and more confusion, because even among the military, they play politics. Recently, I saw a list of military officers that have been retired, and you could see that it wasn't a fair retirement from the list of the names. It's like certain sections of the country were being deprived of the opportunity for their sons or daughters who are in the military to serve their full term. People are being retired prematurely. And what is the reason for that? So if Nigerians are clamoring for a military rule, will it be a military rule that will be fair to all? Will it be a military rule that will be representational to all sections of the society? Or will it be a sectional military rule which would further oppress the people of Nigeria?
I totally agree with you on that part. Like, we wanted democracy and we have democracy, because when you mentioned how the military now is lukewarm, they are not even as high as they were before. In the checkpoints, like you have mentioned earlier, when you go there, you'll be scared. But nowadays, people don't even get scared when they get to the checkpoints. You see people shunting, like you said, let me use that word. And then before I know, when you're you're approaching a checkpoint and you're on a call, you'll be like, no, the passengers in the car will tell you to off your phone, cut the call till we pass, because they are scared of the police. But today you will see people passing and making their calls and nothing happens, because the police, the soldiers or the military are just lukewarm. Let me use that word. They are not as high and mighty as they used to. So I really stand with you in this part, that even if they come to power, they won't really be of good to us. Maybe it will just be we'll end up being oppressed by them. But then now we're still talking democracy, and we want to, let me say, compare of course we have set that base that the democracy, of course, is far better than the military regime that they had those days. They had some who were bloody while some were not. We saw that some people had issues, and even because of those military regime, we had a situation that the country was going to break into two. We had the issue of Biafra because of the military regime. But then, thanks be to God and the people that were in power during that period, that we are still a country. But then, not to forget that there are still agitations about breaking off because of some things that are still not equal. People feel, in the Southeast especially, they feel the distribution of wealth, the zoning issue, especially now that we are in the electoral period, the processes are still ongoing. Most people feel, the aspirants now, they feel they are not being fair to, like, the zoning. They're supposed to go to the south, and so, all manner of agitations are going on. But then, if we are truly going to be a democratic state, then we should be able to do that well, and how people will feel that we are in a democracy. Because when you look at all the sectors now I want to come in the angle of comparison between both administrations during the democratic rule. During the PDP rule, when you served, I would say personally, there were some things that people enjoyed. Although some people are still enjoying it at this point, but the what's the word now? People are finding something so much difficult, talking about the healthcare sector, talking about economy. We had inflation rise twice during this present regime that we are in. And then we have seen a lot that has gone on. We have the high issue of insecurity, like I've mentioned earlier, that we are still battling as a country. Even the security agencies are finding it very difficult to call or curtail these issues happening. So how will we say that the APC, comparing the both regimes now, have done in terms of their administration?
Well, I served under the PDP, and just like the name goes, People's Democratic Party. So the focus of the party was on the people, and services were rendered to the best of the ability of the government of that day. I know, for instance, serving under President Jonathan, he made every cabinet member to sign a performance appraisal form, and you had to report on your activities every 3 months, every 6 months, and annually. And every minister was up and doing. I would say no wonder there are places that have been out of government for 7 years, but there are places I go and people will look at me and say, oh, I know you somewhere. And then they say, oh, you were a minister. I try to say, no, it's maybe my sister or some look-alike. They said, no, it's you. And this is because we were there in the face of the public at all times. We had to render account of everything that we were doing. No minister could stay, avoid such sessions. This government has also been 7 years in power, and I'm sorry to say that I don't know most of the ministers in this government. This, I believe, is because there is no that system of accountability. No one is reporting to anyone. Whether they worked or they didn't work, it's like nobody is holding them accountable for that. There's the Information Act, the Freedom of Information Act. I know that when I was in office, there were NGOs that demanded for us to make public certain things we were doing, and we had to present that. I don't think that that particular law is being used now, or even when people make demands to know one or two things happening, no one is willing to. This government came up with a law on hate speech, and one expected that they would have followed through with that. But today on the social media, there are all kinds of hate speeches going on, and no one is being called to order. When the PDP government was in power, the Goodluck Jonathan administration was in power, by the time we were leaving, exchange rate was 170 naira to the dollar. But today, as we speak, it's up to about 600, and nothing seemed to be happening. Petrol was going for 87 naira. Today, we're paying up to 200 naira in some places, and nothing.
And, I remember sorry to cut you short, during that period, when Goodluck added the subsidy was removed at some point, there was a nationwide strike. But we saw in this regime, when that happened, there was nothing. Nobody said anything.
Yeah, because people are even confused. I would say we were held to ransom in 2012 when the subsidy was being removed. And it's the same people who mobilized Nigerians who now took over power. And then they have done worse. But it's like Nigerians have suddenly become docile and don't know their left or their right. I remember when the Chibok girls issue happened, there were protests all over. But since Chibok, how many more kidnaps have taken place? How many atrocities have taken place? And it's like Nigerians have suddenly lost their voice. They've lost track of what is happening. So if Nigerians are not ready to hold government to account, then it's like we are ready to be oppressed and suppressed, and whatever happens to us, it's like we have invited it upon ourselves. So whether it's a spell or a veil that is cast over Nigeria, I think we have gotten to a point that we must make every effort to remove that veil, to remove the spell, and the opportunity has come with the elections in 2023. Candidates are now in place. I wonder how many Nigerians have registered as voters, particularly among the Christians. We have lots and lots of youth who spend a lot of time on the social media, and then they are not registered. So that is of no use to us, because it's not the social media that would determine the election. It would influence it in a way, but the final result will not be in the social media. So I would want to appeal to ECWA TV to use this platform and educate as many Nigerians as possible, especially among Christians, that there's still a window. The continuous voter registration is on, and it will end at the end of the month. And it is important that every Nigerian who is eligible to vote must register and must be prepared to cast their vote, not just cast it. In the past, we have had, Araba, Akasa, Atsari, whatever.
Okay, Araka, Atsari.
Yeah. So I think the church must speak with one voice to educate everyone who is eligible, to make sure that they register, and not just register, that on the day of election they come out and vote, and monitor their votes and make sure that these votes count. Not that we just vote and then we sit back and complain. We have not seen the politicians. We don't like that one. It's amongst the Christians that you have the greatest criticisms. But our brothers on the other side, once they have somebody there, they give their maximum support. They don't mind who else is contesting with them, because they know whatever it is, that person is going to represent their interests. But for Christians, we never see it that way. We criticize to the point that we would want to throw the baby with the bathwater, and that is most unfortunate. I hope that we would have a change of mind. Now there are all kinds of campaigns going on. It must be a Muslim ticket, and the Christians are listening, and nobody is saying anything. I don't know.
You know, this Muslim ticket something, because it has happened in Kaduna State, and now they feel, okay, maybe let's try it to the whole country. But then we as Christians, if we keep quiet and then let that happen, who is going to represent us there? Because the Bible says, if the wicked is in rule, we will suffer. So if we keep quiet, just like Mr. Chokpe has said, we have to go out and vote. We have to, if you don't have your PVC, there's still a window time. You have to make that effort, and it has to be deliberate, because we will all suffer. If you say you don't care whatever that is happening in the electoral process, then I tell you, we will all suffer together. We should try and do what we are supposed to, so that we will change the narrative, and criticisms will not change anything for us.
Yes, it is very important, like she rightly said, now it is time for us to do the needful. It is very important, particularly you can't vote until you have your voter's card. And the only way to obtain your voter's card is to go and register. And the voter's registration is going on. So I believe Ekwa TV, like you said, that is the cardinal objective of why we are created, you know, to spread the gospel. And every gospel is a good news. And that is what we are doing to the best of our ability. And then we're bringing people like you who have vast knowledge, who have tested power, who are out there to give us their experience and to advise. And I can tell you we are doing our best, and that is why we are calling for people out there, whether ECWA or non-ECWA. It is very important for you to support this cause, because we have buried our heads to do just the gospel, and that is what we are doing. Anywhere the truth is, we will do our possible best to see that we bring it out to you, to enlighten you on things that are going on, to educate you on what is happening, and then still the religious part, you know, still doing our best in that angle. Thank you so much, Ma, for your input. I just want to take a few words from you, because the next set are getting ready to take over from us. Now, 2023 general election is coming, even though you have given out your position when it comes to the issue of social media and then the real voting. I don't want to go there, but I want to hear your opinion as a mother. You know, you're the ones that control home, and then in some certain degree you have influence. So as a mother, please, can you talk to your children, us out there?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I want to say to all Nigerians, but particularly the Christians, that we should not live under the illusion that Christians cannot play politics. For me, I read the Bible from cover to cover, and I can see that issues of governance are very central there. David, for instance, King David, we're told, was a man after God's heart, and he was a king. So why would we in this 21st century now say that Christianity cannot mix with politics? We're supposed to influence the political processes in our country so that we would have the kingdom of God come into our nation and his perfect will to be done.
Thank you so much, Ma. It has been very impactful with you on the show. We're really grateful for you being here. And to my co-hosts, So Lusambo, I'm really grateful for doing this again with me.
Yeah.
And to our viewers, thank you for staying with us. But before we go, I want to leave you with this. Democracy must have to be a collective business of all of us. It is the estate of both the rich, the poor, the enlightened and the not so enlightened, the nonentity and the boisterous, though the author does not subscribe to the latter because it is not a perimeter for nation building and national stability and cohesion. It is an instrument often imbibed by supposed enterprises forces who might not be playing the right kind of rhythm for Nigeria corporate existence. It has been Nigeria Now special edition on the Democracy Day. With this, happy democracy once again. Bye-bye.